Hey everyone, I'm about to tell you an incredible story about how my former husband invited his poor ex-wife, that's me, to his wedding ceremony, hoping to humiliate me in front of everyone. What happened when I made my entrance shocked every single person there, especially him. But before we jump into this wild tale, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends and family. I'd also love to hear where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support truly keeps me going. Now, let's get into this amazing story. I'm Sarah Thompson, and I'm 34 years old. If you had seen me 2 years back, you wouldn't believe the woman standing before you today. 2 years ago, I was completely broken by betrayal, holding on to pieces of a marriage I believed would never end. Michael Johnson, my spouse of 6 years, decided one spring day that he had discovered something superior. Her name was Rachel Stone, 10 years my junior, bright-eyed and ready to step into the life I had been living. The day he walked away, he couldn't even be kind about it. "Sarah, you've become different. I need somebody who brings excitement into my life," he said, casually leaning against our kitchen island like he was talking about tomorrow's weather. I just stood there holding my morning coffee, completely numb, wondering how someone could destroy an entire existence with such careless words. The embarrassment didn't stop when he moved out. Small communities love their gossip, and despite living in a fancy area near Boston, news traveled lightning fast through our social circle. Friends who used to join us for dinner stopped reaching out. People I knew would give me those sad, pitying looks at the supermarket. I despised their sympathy nearly as much as I despised Michael's arrogant attitude. Rachel didn't waste any time settling into his place, wearing the earrings and necklaces I had chosen for our special occasions, sharing perfectly staged social media posts from our old favorite getaway spots. Nothing hurts quite like seeing your replacement living your former life right in front of you. It stung deeply, and I allowed that pain to burn, because fury can become your driving force when you learn how to harness it properly. Those first few weeks following our divorce were absolutely brutal. I'd open my eyes each morning feeling like my chest was collapsing inward. I quit putting on makeup, ignored phone calls, and avoided looking at my reflection. But one evening, Madison Brooks, my closest friend since our college days, sat me down and said bluntly, "Sarah, this isn't your final chapter. This is your fresh beginning." She had that direct, no-nonsense way of speaking she always used when she was about to rescue me from my own destruction. That conversation changed everything. I began with small steps, returning to the fitness center, choosing meals that energized me rather than numbed my feelings. I brought in a personal trainer called Olivia, who wouldn't accept any excuses. Initially, I could barely run 1 mile, but months down the road, I was easily completing 5-mile runs. My clothing started fitting differently, my shoulders straightened, and one morning, I saw my reflection in a store window and realized I was coming back to life. The physical transformation was clear, but internally, I was constructing something much stronger. I enrolled in that advanced marketing program I'd been postponing for years. When I completed it, I received job offers from 2 respected companies, and I picked the one that allowed me to travel freely. For the first time in years, my passport started collecting stamps from Italy, Greece, and France. Each journey helped me rediscover parts of myself that Michael had solely worn away. It was in Milan where I encountered David Carter. David was tall, wore expensive suits perfectly, and had the kind of presence that commanded attention without any effort. He was presenting at a technology conference while I was there for work. We found ourselves at the same dinner table, and the conversation flowed naturally. Unlike Michael, David actually paid attention to what I said. By evening's end, he asked if we could meet again. By month's end, we were practically inseparable. David didn't simply love me, he valued who I was. He noticed small details about me, how I preferred my coffee, how I tucked my hair behind my ear when I was deep in thought. He didn't flinch at my emotional wounds. With him, I wasn't rebuilding myself to prove anything to anybody. I was just living authentically. Still, occasionally I would think about Michael and Rachel. not with yearning, but with distant wonder. Last I heard, they were living in some downtown loft, going to fancy charity events, and documenting every moment online. From the outside, it looked like a perfect success story. But I knew Michael well enough to suspect he was still chasing his next adventure, never satisfied with what was right in front of him. One crisp fall afternoon, about 18 months after our divorce papers were signed, I walked past a boutique and noticed a dress in the display window. Deep midnight blue, floor length, just enough sparkle to catch light without being flashy. I went inside, tried it on, and felt a quiet strength wash over me. I didn't understand then why I purchased it, only that someday it would serve its purpose. I had transformed from a woman who could barely face the world into someone who could enter any room and command respect. People who once whispered about my downfall now wanted to know how I had turned things around. My approach was straightforward. I refused to stay defeated. I put money into improving myself. And I never forgot the face of the man who assumed I would fall apart. I didn't cross paths with Michael for almost 2 years. His absence didn't trouble me at all. Life was rich and fulfilling. My career was flourishing. David and I were making plans for our future together. But destiny has a way of coming full circle when you're not expecting it. And sometimes it gives you exactly the right opportunity to shine. That opportunity would come in the form of an envelope, one that held familiar handwriting, and an invitation that would test just how much I had grown. The envelope showed up on a Thursday morning, mixed in with a pile of work papers and a package I had ordered from Paris. I almost threw it away without looking, but the handwriting made me freeze. Michael's handwriting, slightly tilted, all capital letters for the name on the envelope. My first reaction was that he needed something from me. My second was that I couldn't care less. Still, curiosity can be dangerous. I slipped my finger under the seal and pulled out a thick cream-colored card with gold lettering. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Michael Johnson and Rachel Stone. The date was 2 months in the future. The location was a vineyard estate just outside Cape Cod. I stared at those words, half expecting them to rearrange themselves into something less ridiculous. There was a handwritten message at the bottom. Thought you might want to see how it's supposed to be done, right? My jaw clenched tight. This wasn't just an invitation. This was theatre designed to humiliate me. Michael wanted me there. He wanted me to watch his version of Happily Ever After, while remembering how I had been thrown away. I left the card sitting on my counter for a long time. Part of me wanted to toss it directly into the garbage, cutting off whatever power he thought he still had over me. But another part, the part that had rebuilt herself from nothing, felt something sharper. Not exactly anger, something quieter and more calculated. I realized I wasn't upset. I was entertained. That evening, David came over. I was curled up on the couch with the invitation sitting on my coffee table. He spotted it right away, and for a few minutes that morning, the rest of the time, was once more better. They woke up with great pity light. Who's getting married? He asked, loosening his tie. I would think the senses from the outcry and think of the commonplace which everybody's pain is being known. Michael and Rachel, I said, watching his expression. He picked it up, read the smug little message, and raised an eyebrow. And he sent this to you? Oh, he sent it to me on purpose, I replied. This isn't a peace offering, it's a performance. David looked at me for a moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. Then let's make sure the audience gets more than they expected. That's one of the things I adore about David. He never builds up my ego carelessly, but when he sees a chance for me to stand proud, he's right there supporting me. We spent the next hour brainstorming ideas. Should we attend? Should we pretend it never arrived? Somewhere between sipping wine and watching the sunset through my window, our plan came together. We weren't just going to show up, we were going to make an entrance. I could picture it clearly, the two of us stepping out of a car that turned heads, dressed in outfits that silenced conversations. No drama, no public confrontation, just a presence so undeniable that it changed the entire energy of their perfect day. The following weekend, David arranged for us to visit an upscale tailor in New York. While he was getting measured for a midnight black tuxedo that made him look like he belonged on a magazine cover, I wandered into the evening gown section. My fingers found a dress that literally took my breath away. Champagne silk, fitted at the waist with a subtle shimmer that caught light like water at sunset. The neckline was bold but tasteful. The train was long enough to flow gracefully without causing me to trip. I slipped into it in the dressing room and turned toward the mirror. The woman looking back at me didn't look like somebody's former wife. She looked like someone who wrote her own destiny. When I stepped out, David's expression said everything I needed to hear. "That's the one," he said quietly. We left the store carrying garment bags, a quiet excitement buzzing between us. This wasn't about Michael anymore. This was about walking into a place where I had once been defined by someone else's opinion, and proving without saying a word that I had outgrown that entire story. In the weeks before the wedding, life continued normally. I worked on a campaign launch for a luxury brand, had dinner with friends, and took weekend trips with David. But every now and then, I'd glance at the date on my calendar and feel that spark of excitement. I worked on the date of my parents and my family, and often both of them work. Madison caught me smiling at my phone one afternoon and asked what I was planning. When I explained, she laughed so hard she had to put down her coffee. "Oh, this is going to be incredible," she said. "Promise me you'll take photos." I promised nothing. Photos weren't needed. I wasn't doing this for memories. I was doing it for the moment itself. That split second when Michael would realize I was no longer the woman he had abandoned. 2 nights before the wedding, David took me to dinner at a quiet rooftop restaurant. The city sparkled below us, and the air was just cool enough for me to wrap his jacket around my shoulders. "Are you nervous?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not at all. I just want to walk in, make my point, and walk out." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." The morning of the wedding, I woke to sunlight streaming across the bed. My gown hung in its protective bag by the closet. David's tuxedo hung beside it. In a few hours, we'd be stepping into a scene Michael thought he controlled. This was about walking into a place where I had once been defined by someone else's opinion, and proving without saying a word that I had outgrown that entire story. He had no clue we were about to completely rewrite it. The drive to Cape Cod felt like the opening of a movie, the kind where you know the best scene is waiting just around the corner. The sky was crystal clear, the ocean sparkling in the distance, and David was behind a wheel of the Rolls-Royce Phantom he had arranged for the day. Its polished black surface reflected everything like a perfect mirror. We weren't rushing. We didn't need to. The power was in knowing we could arrive exactly when we decided to. Inside the car, everything was quiet but electric. My gown was spread across my lap in a sweep of champagne silk, the fabric cool against my skin. David glanced over, his hand briefly touching mine on the center console. "Ready?" he asked, though he already knew my answer. I smiled, calm and confident. "More than ready." The vineyard estate appeared like something from a luxury magazine. Rolling green hills, whitewashed barns converted into event spaces. Rows of cars neatly parked by valets in crisp uniforms. Even from far away, I could hear the soft hum of music and chatter. Michael had spent serious money on this event. We pulled up to the entrance just as a small group of guests arrived in a regular sedan. Their conversation stopped when they saw our car glide to a stop. One of them leaned toward another, whispering behind a manicured hand. I kept looking straight ahead, my breathing steady. The calmness wasn't fake. It was the natural result of knowing I had already won, no matter how the next hour unfolded. A valet in a navy jacket stepped forward to open David's door. He got out with easy confidence, buttoning his tuxedo jacket, then walked around to my side. Through the tinted glass, I could see faces turning toward us. Cameras and phones were already being raised. Inside, the reception was in full swing. I knew because I could hear pieces of conversation from the open doors. Rachel's laughter, bright but strained. Michael's voice pitched slightly higher as he welcomed guests. They had no idea we were only a few steps away. David offered his hand to help me out, but I didn't move immediately. For a moment, I simply looked at him, tall, composed, the picture of confidence. He wasn't just my life partner. He was my partner in this moment, the one who understood exactly what this meant. I took his hand and stepped out. The sunlight caught the gown instantly, making it shimmer like liquid gold. My hair, styled in soft waves, moved gently in the breeze. I didn't need to look around to know we had captured the complete attention of everyone nearby. The atmosphere shifted. I could feel it. We walked slowly toward the entrance, the sound of our footsteps on the stone pathway, somehow louder than the music inside. My heels clicked with measured precision, David's arm warm against mine. People weren't whispering anymore. They were openly staring. A few smiled, clearly impressed. Others, I suspected, were already texting inside to announce our arrival. At the doorway, a coordinator with a clipboard stopped mid-sentence when she saw us. "Welcome," she said, her voice rising into a question. David gave a polite nod. "Thank you. We're here for Michael Johnson's wedding." Something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe, or the shock of connecting my name on the guest list to the reality standing in front of her. She stepped aside quickly. Inside, the room was awash in white flowers and twinkling lights. Tables draped in linen surrounded a central dance floor, where Rachel was in the middle of greeting guests. Her gown was beautiful, I'll give her that, but I noticed how her eyes darted toward the entrance when the first murmurs began. Michael was at the bar, laughing with someone from his office. He turned to see what had captured the room's attention, and in that instant, his face completely changed. The laughter drained away, replaced by a tightness around his jaw. He blinked once, then again, as if the image in front of him might rearrange into something else if he stared long enough. I didn't speed up or slow down. David and I maintained the same pace, moving through the crowd as conversations dropped into silence. Every step was deliberate. Not for show, but for control. This wasn't about storming in. It was about arriving like we owned the place. When we reached the edge of the dance floor, I glanced at Rachel. Her smile stayed in place, but her eyes had gone sharp and calculating. She turned slightly toward Michael, her hand brushing his arm in a subtle attempt to steady him, but I saw it, the flicker of uncertainty she couldn't quite hide. David leaned in just enough for me to hear. "They're already falling apart." I gave the smallest smile. "We're just getting started." The music swelled for a moment, as if the band sensed something in the air. Guests shifted in their seats, turning their bodies for a better view. My heartbeat was steady. The calm before the storm wasn't about waiting for the storm to arrive. It was about knowing you are the storm, and they just haven't realized it yet. David and I reached the center of the room, as if the space had naturally opened for us. It wasn't arrogance, it was physics. People naturally step aside when they sense something worth watching. The light from the chandeliers caught my gown, scattering gold across the floor. Every movement of the silk was like ripples on water. Michael stood frozen near the bar, one hand gripping a glass he'd forgotten to drink from. His eyes locked on me, then flicked to David, then back to me. It was the look of someone who had been preparing for a casual encounter, but instead got hit by a tsunami. David broke the silence first. With the perfect balance of charm and volume, he addressed the nearest cluster of guests. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Carter, and this is my fiancée, Sarah Thompson." The word fiancée marladened like a dropped champagne glass. Heads turned. A few audible gasps escaped. Someone at the back whispered, "Sarah Thompson, as in," and didn't finish the sentence. They didn't need to. Rachel's smile twitched. It was so slight most people would miss it, but I had spent enough time studying social cues to recognize the micro-fracture. She glanced at Michael, who still hadn't moved. His fingers tightened around the glass until I half wondered if it might shatter. David continued, completely at ease, and happiness seemed to subject where they should be, that there was a fate against a fear of the better chance, and the desire and the downward rules. We're actually flying to Paris next week for our engagement party, but when we received Michael's thoughtful invitation, we couldn't resist coming to wish them well in person. And it was a masterclass in politeness, the kind of statement you couldn't object to without revealing the tension underneath. Polite words, perfectly neutral tone. But everyone in the room heard the undercurrent. This wasn't just a visit. This was a declaration. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My silence was part of the performance. Letting every glance, every shimmer of eye gown, every subtle exchange between David and me tell the story. I could feel eyes on us from every direction, measuring the difference between the woman Michael had left and the woman standing here now. Rachel finally stepped forward, her voice warm but fragile. "Sarah, how lovely of you to come." I met her gaze evenly. "Thank you. You look beautiful, Rachel." She blinked, clearly unsure whether to accept the compliment or search it for a hidden insult. I left it hanging, turning my attention to the flower arrangement beside us. Michael set down his glass and moved closer, the polite smile on his face not quite reaching his eyes. "Sarah," he said, his tone somewhere between surprise and an attempt at control. "This is unexpected." "Life's full of surprises," I replied lightly. "I hear congratulations are in order." For a moment, the room was so quiet, I could hear the faint clink of silverware from across the room. Then someone in the crowd coughed, and conversations resumed, not because the tension had eased, but because people were eager to discuss it in hushed tones. We stayed just long enough to become part of the photographs people were already taking on their phones. David ordered us each a glass of champagne, and we stood together, greeting a few familiar faces. The longer we remained, the more Michael's composure cracked. His glances became shorter, sharper, as if trying to figure out whether I was enjoying myself, and knowing that I absolutely was. At one point, I caught sight of Rachel speaking in low tones to a friend, her hand gesturing subtly toward us. I didn't care what she was saying. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about me walking into a space where they had expected me to be small, and showing them, without a single outburst, that I had outgrown those walls entirely. When David finished his champagne, he glanced at me with that unspoken question. "Ready?" I gave the smallest nod. We walked toward the exit, not hurried, not hesitant. People stepped aside again, the air parting like a tide. At the doorway, David turned briefly, offering a polite nod toward Michael and Rachel. "We'll let you get back to your day," he said. "Best wishes." Michael's jaw tightened, but he managed restrained. As we stepped outside, the cool air wrapped around us. The Rolls-Royce was waiting, the driver holding the door. Before I got in, I took one last glance at the building. Through the wide glass windows, I could see Michael still standing where we had left him, staring at the space we had just vacated. Rachel was at his side, speaking quickly, her smile gone entirely. I slid into the seat, the door closing with a satisfying cushioned click. David joined me, and as the car began to move, he reached for my hand. "You were magnificent," he said. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "No, we were." We didn't need to look back. The wedding had been theirs in name only. For those brief, charged moments, the room had belonged to us. We hadn't been on the road for more than 10 minutes when my phone started buzzing. David and I exchanged a knowing look. Neither of us needed to guess who it was. I didn't answer, not yet. The first call went unanswered, then a text arrived. "Michael, Sarah, can we talk, please?" I almost laughed. "Please." This, from the man who had once told me I'd never find anyone better. I let the message sit unread for a few minutes before locking my phone. David, without prying, simply brushed his thumb over my hand. "You don't owe him anything," he said quietly. By the time we reached our penthouse, 2 more texts had come through. "Michael, I shouldn't have invited you. That was a mistake." "Michael, you didn't have to show up like that." Like that. I could almost hear the edge in his voice. See the way his jaw clenched when things didn't go according to his plan. The irony was delicious. He had wanted me there to sit in the shadows and watch him parade his new life. Instead, I had walked in and rewritten the entire scene. Madison called an hour later. "Sarah, you absolute legend! My cousin was at that wedding. She said you and David looked like movie stars. Apparently, Rachel's been in the bathroom for half an hour crying." I sighed, but it wasn't guilt. "Madison, I didn't go there to hurt anyone. I just needed to remind myself that I'm not the woman they thought I was." She chuckled. "Oh, you reminded them, and the whole guest list." That night, as David and I sat on the balcony watching the city lights twinkle, another message came through. This one was longer. "Michael, I made a mistake letting you go. Seeing you today, I realized what I lost. If there's any part of you that still cares..." I didn't finish reading it. I simply deleted the entire conversation thread. Because here's the thing, his regret wasn't about love, it was about losing control. And I had learned the hard way that control disguised as affection was nothing I needed in my life again. I leaned into David, who wrapped an arm around me. "So, Paris next week?" he asked, a smile tugging at his mouth. "Paris?" I agreed. And after that, wherever we feel like going. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need closure. I had already won the moment I walked into that room, head high, with someone who loved me for who I was, not who they could mold me to be. Some battles aren't fought with anger or loud words. Some are won with a gown that shimmers, a partner who beams with pride, and the quiet knowledge that you've outgrown the life you once thought you couldn't live without. And Michael, he'd have to live with the image of my arrival forever. The moment his wedding stopped being about him and became the day he realized he was just a chapter in my story. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. Sometimes the people who thought they buried you will one day have to watch you flourish. Never waste energy proving yourself to someone who chose to walk away. Instead, pour all that energy into becoming the best version of yourself. Trust me, success, self-respect, and genuine love speak louder than any revenge speech you could ever give. So, if your ex invited you to their wedding, what would you do? Would you ignore it, go and cause a scene, or show up looking like their biggest nightmare come to life? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story because somewhere out there, a Michael is planning a wedding and a Sarah is planning her arrival. Thanks for watching. Please stay tuned for the next video. Bye.